the guys picked me up and carried me back to an aid station, and from the aid station I went to a tent hospital and had an immediate surgery done, and that was the first of 5 major surgeries I'd have experienced on my face, because the doctors there called for donations of hip bones so they could rebuild my zygomatic bone there that was kind of crushed. But while it didn't get into my eye, I'll never know how that happened, but the eye was hanging out there a little bit, and I forget all the extent of the injuries sustained at that time. But anyway, down the line, I went through 5 more surgeries to get my face rebuilt.
So one question I got, I think the viewers would like to know. We know that when you were on Saipan, which was the very first combat you saw, you were wounded there badly. And of course, that caused some time in the hospital getting healed up and everything. And then of course you went into Iwo Jima, where you met 4 Japanese soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. And luckily you survived that one. And then of course you went on to Okinawa, where you paid the real price by losing your face and everything. How does any combat veteran get wounded so many times and yet still have the gumption to go into another battle? What's it like?
Well, back at that time, Jimmy, the patriotism was extremely high. And most of the guys that I was with in the service, they were all my age, 17, 18, 19 years old. And the recruiting stations were besieged by gangs of guys wanting to get in, especially in the Marine Corps. Boy, they were highly offended. Some of them had brothers and uncles that were killed in the service, and they just wanted to go out there and do their part. And that's just the way it was. You hung on there. I knew of a lot of guys that were badly wounded in the hospital, and they could hardly wait until they were well enough that they could get out there in the field again. Give me a flamethrower or give me anything at all. I want to get out there and get back to work. That was the attitude back then. I don't think that attitude prevails today, but that I don't know for sure. But back then, it was the order of the day. As long as you could take a step or move a hand, or you could hold a pistol, a rifle, submachine gun, or anything, flamethrower, well, you were eager to do it. I had a friend there, Frenchy Santerre. He had a brother that was in the service. He had gone in a year before Frenchy did, and he was on one of the islands that was overrun by the Japanese. He was a radio man, and they thought he had direct contact with the White House, the Pentagon, and every place else, and they ordered him to make radio contact with him. He says, I can't do that. I don't know anything about that. You know, I'm just a radio repairman here. And they tortured him terribly, and it took him a long time to die. And things like that, handed down to a younger brother, really set well for a super warrior to come along. And Frenchy would have taken on the entire Japanese army, what was left of it, if he had to. He was just motivated by the death of his brother, a very, very cruel, painful death. And that's what motivated quite a few guys who had uncles and cousins and brothers in the service and were killed, and it just motivated them to go out and do likewise.
We got about 4 minutes before we get into the next segment of our program, but I wanted the people to realize that as a young man at 17, you were signed a professional baseball contract with the St. Louis franchise to play Major League Baseball, but then you gave that up to go into service and do your patriotic duty to serve our country. But then in addition to all the 3 times that you were wounded in all 3 theater of operations, you also were the prisoner of war at 17. Real short, like, give us a short resume in about 3 minutes about what was that like?
Well, that was probably the nastiest part of my entire life. I never imagined at any time a group of people being as cruel as the Japanese were at that time. For absolutely no reason at all, they would order you beaten, whipped, deprived of food and drink. Of course, they didn't provide you much food and drink anyway, but it was just an intended cruelty on anyone that was American. Those people truly envied our way of life, and they wanted to end it. They thought, sure, the emperor would be riding his horse up the Capitol steps at one time, but their means were so devious that you actually wondered at the audacity of people. Were there really people like it? Did they put this on or what? And they were dead serious about it. They loved to inflict pain and hardship on people. And it was only by the grace of God that I survived that. And many occasions I feigned hopelessness, or helplessness I should say, due to different sicknesses that were abound in the island. And then I'd get put on lighter duty, at which time I would find more ways to sabotage the Japanese efforts, taking any means available to do so, even though you knew that if you were caught, it would cost you your life, or at least cost you your head, mounted up on a bamboo pole. And that's just the way it was back then. It was very, very bad.
It seemed like a very scary situation, and I just can't realize, and I'm sure our viewers do also, can't surmise what that's like to be a prisoner of war and to go into combat so many times. And I guess the best way to express that is that how we've done it many times. We've been asked what's it like to be in combat. And I think that we said many times, for those who were there, we'll never forget, and those who were never there won't ever know.
That's right.
So it's an experience that one goes through as a young person. Needless to say, you lose those teenage years of your life. You go into a man overnight, and it seems as if that's the way it was to be. Well, John, I want to thank you so much for your testimony in this program tonight. And we want to thank our viewers for watching the last battle of World War II, Okinawa. And we want to be sure and welcome you to join us next week as we explore the Battle of Iwo Jima, a battle that cost the lives of 8,000 Americans and left us with the historic flag raising on Mount Suribachi, and a flag raising that we all remember. And as we close Tell America Tonight, we'd like for you to join us as we preview next week's Battle of Iwo Jima. And for those who served and survived, we always will remember that freedom is not free. Good night, everyone.
One reason is the savagery of the fighting. There are more Marine casualties on Iwo than in any other battle of World War II. The other is Joe Rosenthal's photograph. And thanks to that photograph, more than a half century later, we remember.
When I went ashore on Iwo for the first time after the war, I went up to the north end to see if I could find the place where one of my very closest friends then was killed. It was very peaceful. 50 years of not being blown up by naval shells and whatnot had given all of the verdant qualities to the island that it had had before we invaded it.
I spent 10 days on Iwo Jima, and I've spent 55 years. I don't think a day has gone by that I haven't thought of this place.
There is an unspoken bond among those who survive that is felt at reunions year after year.
We sit around a big table, and some of the girls who were high school sweethearts bring scrapbooks they kept. Nobody gets drunk, and nobody says we won the damn war for you. We just visit.
You're closer than a brother. Because my life has never depended on my brother, but it has him.
Time has transformed the 18-year-old boys who went to war into white-haired grandfathers. World War II veterans are currently dying at the rate of 1,500 a day.
They all know, or at least they should know by now, that there's no way you get out of this alive. So a lot of our friends and the veterans of that battle are passing on to their reward.
The Marines buried on Iwo Jima were returned to American soil in 1949. Since then, all of the flag raisers, except Charles Lindbergh, have joined them. And visitors to Iwo Jima still trace the ground where they were first laid to rest.
We will remember how you looked when we placed you reverently, lovingly in the ground. Thus do we memorialize those who, having ceased living with us, now live within us.
We lost 6,800 killed, and we saved the lives of 27,000 airmen.
It had been a bloody, bloody battle, but our mission had been accomplished. Taking Iwo definitely hastened the end of that war.
I'm a veteran of 3 wars that our country has fought over a period of about 35 years. None of the others compare to Iwo Jima. There's never been anything quite like it since.
The battle that was unlike any other gave to the world a photograph unlike any other. Ultimately, the photograph represents every man or woman who has fought for victory in any country at any time. It is a striving for freedom with full knowledge of its price.
Yes, I'm the fellow who took the photograph of the flag raising on Mount Suribachi. But the Marines took Iwo Jima.